In the town of Moke, beauty was more than just a good thing. It was hope, prayer, and a big promise. And Ego was all three. She wasn't just the pride of her family, she was their shining star. When Ego walked by, strangers would slow down and neighbors would sigh loudly. Her skin was soft, like fresh pounded yam. Her hips were round and full like river stones after rain. And Ego, she didn't just have beauty, she wore it like a crown. She walked with her head high, her steps slow, and a smile that seemed to say, I know what I deserve, and it's not poor you. By the time Ego turned 17, tutors started lining up like students waiting to register for WAEC exams. Some boys came with sweaty hands and big promises they couldn't keep. Others borrowed cars or arrived with noisy motorcycles. But each time, Ego would smile sweetly and say, God forbid, I can never suffer with any man. It wasn't because she was proud, it was because she was hungry. Hungry for a life she had only seen on Instagram. A life where you didn't worry about how to make money, only how to spend it. Ego wasn't chasing love. She was chasing arrival, the rich lifestyle, and she was ready and willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Her mother, Madam Ego, didn't mind one bit. In fact, she encouraged it. She said, my daughter, your beauty is your oil well. We must use it very well before it dries up. So, Ego woke up every day polishing her shoes. She was never caught on fresh. Her hair packed always neat. Her clothes always fine. And her smile always fit. She was waiting for the right man. The rich man. The one who will lift her and her family out of the muddy streets of Umokwe and into the golden life she always dreamed of. Many suitors came when Ogi turned 22, but Ego stood strong. If I don't marry into well, she said, I would rather stay unmarried. Even Ugo, her childhood friend, wasn't spared. She liked to go, but anytime he tried to come close, she would laugh and say, please, oh, I'm not your class. My name is Ego, and I must marry into riches. Ezigbo Ego. Everything stayed the same until one hot afternoon. Whispers filled the air, flying from mouth to mouth like dry leaves in Hamatan. A big company was coming to Umoke for free medical outreach. And not just that, their CEO was coming too. The great chief, Agwamama himself. A rich man. A man who built hospitals and gave scholarships. A man whose name alone could open doors that had been locked for years. The whole town buzzed like bees. Everyone wanted to see the chief. Even Ego got excited. That afternoon, when Chief Agwamama convoy entered the town, Umoke froze. Drums beat loudly, people danced and clapped. Doctors and nurses rolled out the vehicles with boxes full of free medicines and tools for free tests. Then the great man himself, Chief Agwamama, stepped out. The signs of old age were clear. His beard was sprinkled with grey. Her eyes had heavy folds and he walked like a small limp. The limp of a man who had seen many years but whose money kept him standing strong. Some young girls whispered behind their hands, he's old though. But Ego didn't care. In her heart she prayed, hey, let this man notice me, oh, let him see me. Because in Chief Agwamama's slow, important walk, Ego saw everything she had ever wished for. Wealth, glory and fame. Chief Agwamama smiled and waved at the crowd like a king who had forgotten how to be an ordinary man. Ego stood at the edge of the gathering. She didn't jump or shout. She just stood there. Beautiful, calm, bright like a gift waiting to be unwrapped. And then, for a small magical moment, Chief Agwamama's eyes found hers. A slow smile grew on his lips. He leaned and whispered something to the man beside him. And Ego smiled secretly to herself. He has seen me, she thought, her heart dancing happily. Later, she even joined the line for the free medicine. Imagine, free drugs. I must get that too. That night, the town could not stop talking. Chief Agwamama is not a small man, no, one woman shouted. Even his shoe looks so expensive, another one said. Everyone praised him, the great chief who brought doctors free drugs and a new kind of hope to their little town. And Ego, she couldn't sleep that night because deep in her heart she knew her story was about to change. A few weeks later, Ego was packaging her mother's wares to be taken to the store when she noticed a black SUV pull up in front of their compound. Not long after, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Ego opened it and met a man in a crisp suit and dark sunglasses. I'm looking for Miss Egombo, he said, glancing at a small card in his hand. Ego blinked in confusion. Someone directed me here, he continued. Am I in the right place? Ego nodded slowly. He was Chief Agwa Mama's driver and he had come with an invitation. Chief wanted Ego to join him for dinner. Ego stood frozen, the tray of groundnuts trembling slightly in her hand. By evening, Umoke was already humming like stirred beehive. At the market, on the dusty roads, even inside the small church, people whispered, Chief Agwa Mama came looking for Ego. He sent his driver. He wants to see her. Some said she had used spiritual powers to capture the chief's eye. Others scoffed, saying the old man simply wanted to feel young again. But Ego didn't hear them. Her mind had already flown far ahead to images of herself in glittering lace, sitting beside Chief Agwa Mama at ceremonies, bathed in camera flashes. Never mind that Chief was old enough to be her grandfather. My season has come, she whispered to herself. By the weekend, the black SUV returned. The same suited driver stepped out, adjusting his sunglasses. Mama Ego burst out of the house first, wrapper flapping behind her. Good afternoon, sir, she greeted, nearly bending double with respect. The driver nodded politely, then turned to Ego. My oga will be expecting you by 5 p.m. he said, handing her a neatly packaged bag. He asked me to give you this. It's a dress. He said you should wear it and look beautiful. Ego's heart stumbled, then took off in a wild gallop. Mama Ego clapped her hands, her face shining with joy. Ego! Odogu wife in the making, she cried out. Even the neighbors peered from their windows, whispering louder now. Imagine, Chief Agwa Mama, the same one that built half the town, choosing Ego. Hey, Ego is lucky, oh. Chai, but imagine his age. Hi, money still talks. That evening, Ego stood in front of their cracked mirror. The dress shimmered against her skin. Gold earrings, borrowed from her cousin, dangled proudly. She applied lip gloss carefully, trying not to think about the chief's silver hair or the slow way he walked. Mama Ego entered, holding a small Bible. Let me pray for you, she said. She placed a firm hand on Ego's head and prayed for open doors, for favor, and for permanent blessings. Ego closed her eyes, but deep down, her real prayer was simpler. God, please, let this work. Let this man like me. By 5 p.m., the SUV arrived again. Ego climbed in without hesitation. The car smelled of expensive leather and faint cologne. As the car moved through Mokwe, Ego pressed her head against the window, imagining herself rich and untouchable. The restaurant gleamed like a dream. At a corner table, Chief Agwa Mama sat waiting. He stood up slowly when he saw her, his movements deliberate, like a man who had once been strong but now measured every step. My queen, he said, smiling, the slow, heavy smile of a man who had tasted power and was now looking for comfort in youth. He pulled out a chair for her, and Ego sat, smiling tightly, heart pounding. The evening passed in a soft daze. Chief ordered the finest meals, praised her beauty, asked about her family. He laughed deeply, sometimes wheezing slightly, then quickly recovering with a sip of wine. And Ego, though smiling, though laughing at his jokes, quietly counted the liver spots on the back of his hands. But when Chief spoke of the future, of marriage, of cars, of a life beyond anything Ego had ever dared to dream, all her small fears folded into silence. Then, very casually, Chief leaned forward and said, You know, my dear, if I'm going to marry you, we must know our health status. It's only proper. You see, I will arrange everything, he said warmly, his teeth flashing onto the dim lights. But Ego couldn't miss how tired his eyes looked behind the practiced charm. Still overwhelmed by the wine, the praises, and the visions of a better future, Ego nodded eagerly. Anything you say, sir. 2 days later, Ego found herself at a private hospital. The nurses wore polished shoes. The hallways were so clean they looked like mirrors. Everyone spoke in low, respectful tones. The blood was drawn, vitals were checked, forms signed. It's just routine, they said kindly. When the nurse bandaged her arm and handed her a cold bottle of water, Ego smiled. My life has changed, she thought. There's no going back. What she didn't know was that somewhere tucked behind the hospital's main office, a file bearing her name had already been stamped. Perfect match, kidney compatible and healthy. Outside, the evening sun burned rich and gold across Umukwe. The SUV hummed gently along the dusty roads, carrying Ego back to her small cracked world. And as she leaned her head against the window, dreaming of marble floors and silk curtains, the smell of leather and faint old cologne clung quietly to her dreams. The day after the hospital visit, Ego was buzzing with excitement. She felt important as she bounced around the small kitchen helping Mama Ego sift beans, her hands moving faster than her thoughts. Mama, you won't believe it oh, Ego chipped, laughter dancing around her voice. Mama Ego, eager as ever, paused mid-sifting and said, "What happened?" Ego wiped her hands on a cloth and leaned close like someone about to share town secrets. Mama, they took me to a private hospital, Mama. You should have seen that place. Everywhere, clean, sparkling. Chief said I must conduct all health tests before we get married. Mama's eyes widened. Yeah? He wants to marry you. Ewo, chai. Rich people's life sweet oh. Igor nodded proudly. Mama, he said it's a requirement oh, before marriage, to check health status. All these big men, they don't joke with health oh, Mama. See how old he is now, yet he looks so fresh and young. Mama Ego clapped her hands together. My daughter, what are you saying? It is important. Unlike poor people who will just marry like that with hidden sicknesses inside their body. They both laughed loudly, a laugh full of dreams and ignorance. Neither of them saw the storm silently gathering at the edges of their laughter. It wasn't long before Chifagwa Mama fisted Ego's mom. I love your daughter, madam, he said. Don't worry. My entry into your house will change your lives. That day, he dropped gifts for Mama. Bundles of money, shoes, clothes. He also gave Mama Ego a brand new iPhone 16. Mama Ego's joy knew no bounds. She continually jumped around, screaming in excitement. It wasn't long before wedding plans ensued in hot gear. Even though some of Ego's uncles kicked against the wedding, stating that Chief was too old for Ego, Mama Ego silently went behind to give some of them money, and before long, the majority accepted Chief with open arms. The traditional wedding looked like a carnival. Cows tied under canopies, live bands arriving with loudspeakers, Ashebi materials of different styles and colors. On the morning of the traditional wedding, Ego sat before the mirror wearing an expensive lace blouse that shimmered like early dew. Gold earrings dangled from her ears. Heavy coral beads hugged her neck and wrists. Her mother stood beside her, adjusting the wrapper tied across Ego's waist, eyes shining with unshed tears. Ego, mom, look at you, Mama Ego whispered. From this small house now, you are going to be entering the palace of the mighty. Hey! Today your enemies will bow. Ego smiled at her reflection. Mama, this is just the beginning. Chief Agwa Mama sat beside her, smiling broadly. His Isiagu glittering like a piece of borrowed heaven. The age difference between them was visible, but hidden beneath layers of wealth and celebration. Nobody cared. Nobody dared. Money had coated everything. When the ceremony ended and Egos climbed into Chief Agwa Mama's SUV, she leaned back into the seat and sighed deeply. I've made it. As the convoy of cars drove away from Umukwe, carrying her towards a new life she couldn't even imagine yet, her heart melted in imagination. And somewhere beyond the dust, fate was still watching, silently, patiently, waiting for its turn. The mansion was even bigger than Ego imagined. Tall white pillars, glass doors that sparkled under the afternoon sun, marble floors so smooth they reflected her face back at her. There were 2 security guards at the gate, 3 housekeepers in uniforms, and somewhere in the air, the soft smell of jasmine flowers floated like perfume. As Ego stepped out of the SUV, a professional photographer was already snapping pictures, quick flashes to capture the arrival of the Odogu wife. Her mother, who had escorted her home that day in another car, gasped when she saw the house. Chai! Ego! Our enemies are finished! Ego smiled faintly, adjusting the heavy gold necklace Chief had given her that morning. The first few days passed like a dream. Chief bought her everything she mentioned. New shoes, designer bags, gold wristwatches. When she casually said she liked those cars celebrities drive, a brand new Mercedes appeared in the compound the next day, wrapped with a giant red bow. Chief was generous, not only to Ego but to her mother. He built a modern luxurious bungalow for Mama Ego and got her a brand new Lexus car. In a couple of months, Ego's family had moved from poverty to wealth. Her cousins now greeted her with respect. Old classmates sent messages with fake smiles. We always knew you would marry well. Whenever Ego traveled home to see her mother, people greeted her with so much respect. Even people that had laughed at her for marrying a grandpa started celebrating her. But as months passed, small cracks began to appear. Cracks that Ego was too busy shining to notice. At first, it was small things. I don't like what you're wearing, he said. You have to look simple. Wear simple clothes. Look elegant. Nothing flashy that will attract unnecessary eyes. 3 months later, he gave her a new phone. The phone was already programmed with certain numbers, only the people he approved. I want you to start using this phone. It's for your safety, he said. You are no longer a simple village girl. At first, Ego thought it was normal. Rich people live differently, didn't they? But the social media spree never stopped. Photographers came often, professional ones, big cameras, expensive lighting. They staged romantic scenes. Ego and Chief holding hands by the fountain. Ego and Chief laughing on the balcony. Ego and Chief sitting close at the dining tables filled with flowers and candle lights. Each picture posted online painted a perfect fairy tale. Couple goals, Odogu wife and her king. The comments flooded Ego's social media like a river during rainy season. And each time, she smiled. But deep inside, something cold and uneasy crawled around her chest. Because after the camera clicks end, Chief's real face showed. Behind closed doors, he changed. His voice grew sharper, his mood darker. If Ego laughed too loudly, he would look at her sternly. If she asked to visit her friends, he would refuse bluntly. If she tried to make a phone call without permission, the phone would disappear for days. One evening, after a particularly glamorous photo shoot where she wore a gold gown that clung to her hip like silk, Chief grabbed her arm roughly in the hallway. You think this marriage is for fun? He hissed under his breath. You are here for serious business. Never forget that. Marriage is serious business. Ego's breath caught in her throat. She looked into his eyes, not the warm eyes that had smiled at her during their dates, but cold, empty ones. Eyes that saw her not as a partner, not even as a wife, but as property. She wanted to call her mother that night to cry and pour her heart out. But when she asked the housekeeper for her phone, the woman only shook her head nervously and said, Oga say make we keep am till tomorrow. The next morning, when the phone was finally returned, Ego called home with trembling fingers. But it wasn't her mother that answered. It was one of Mama's new housekeepers. Madam says she's busy, oh. She will call you later, the lady said casually. Ego sat down slowly on the edge of the giant bed, the silk bed sheets crumbling under her. For the first time since the wedding, the mansion didn't feel like a palace anymore. It felt like a cage. A golden one, but a cage all the same. And Ego was the bird whose wings had been clipped. Too late to cry for the sky. At first, Ego thought the loneliness would pass. She told herself it was just the apartment, it was just an adjustment, new house, new responsibilities. But the more the days passed, the more the mansion grew even colder. Chief was hardly ever around. He would always be out for business trips, meetings, long evenings spent at private clubs she was never allowed to visit. And when he returned, it was either to eat, shower, or back a few orders and then disappear again. The only people Ego saw daily were the housekeepers and the photographs of herself smiling online. Photos that painted a lie she was now trapped inside. One Wednesday afternoon, as she sat under the gazebo scrolling through old wedding pictures, a convoy of cars rolled into the compound. Chief's children, the ones she had only heard about but never met. 2 daughters and 1 son, all older than her by at least 15 years. They stepped out of their jeeps like they owned the ground, dressed in designer clothes. Ego stood up quickly, smoothing her gown. Good afternoon, she said politely. The first daughter barely glanced at her. The second one adjusted her sunglasses and smirked. The son looked her up and down like a shop item he wasn't planning to buy. Then he said, loud enough for the housekeepers to hear, so this is the new project Daddy brought home? The sisters chuckled. Ego's smile froze on her face. They moved past her like a cold wind, laughing, talking. ignoring her completely. Inside the living room, she could hear their voices. What kind of baby did daddy bring home as wife? This one is almost my daughter's age. Does she even have sense? All for money. She must be from a poverty-stricken family. Daddy must be losing his mind. Ego sat on the stairs. Nobody had warned her that marrying wealth also meant marrying contempt. Later that evening, as Chief returned home, the children gathered around him like bees to honey, laughing, praising him, talking about a new shopping trip they wanted him to sponsor. Ego walked into the living room, hoping to at least greet her husband properly and have a formal introduction. But as she approached, Chief raised a hand sharply. Go upstairs. I'm talking with my children. The finality in his voice was a knife. Ego turned away silently, her heart shattering into tiny pieces under her wrapper. That night, alone in the massive bedroom, Ego tried to call her mother again, tried to find comfort in the voice that once prayed for her breakthrough. But Mama Ego was different now. When she finally answered, her voice was brisk, sharp. Ego, you are calling me again. What is it? What do you want again? Mama, I just, Ego's voice broke without her permission. I'm not happy here, Mama. It's so lonely. I feel like a stranger. They don't even love me here. There was a heavy pause. Then Mama Ego laughed. But it was not the kind of laughter that healed. It was dry. My friend, behave yourself. Is it not this same man that brought me a car and built me a house? How can you say he doesn't love you? Don't disgrace us there. Oh. You better act like you're the best wife on earth. Don't spoil this blessing because of your small emotions. Ego sat there, holding the phone to her ear long after the call had ended, the line buzzing with emptiness. For the first time, she realized even her own mother had married her off to wealth, and nobody, not even blood, would come to rescue her now. As the months passed, the coldness from Chief became thicker. He called her all sorts of names and threw orders at her. One evening, as he passed the study room on the way to the kitchen, she overheard Chief's voice, low, rough, speaking to someone on the phone. You won't be need for more tests. She's healthy. The doctors have confirmed the kidney matches perfectly. We'll schedule the operation after the holidays. Ego froze. Healthy? Kidney match? Operation? Her mind spun, struggling to catch up. What operation? Was she sick? Whose kidney? She wanted to believe she had heard wrong. But deep inside her heart, something ancient and terrifying whispered, you're not here for fun, you're here for serious business. And in that moment, standing in the mansion's hallway, Ego realized she was not a wife, she was a resource. After that night, Ego couldn't sleep properly again. She tossed and turned on the soft, expensive bed. Every knock on the door made her stomach twist. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, as she was being paranoid, but deep down, she knew the truth. Something terrible was coming. The following week, Chief became unusually kind. He started bringing her gifts again, jewelry, perfume, designer slippers. He even staged another photo shoot for social media, a fake anniversary celebration. Photographers snapping pictures of them cutting a cake, smiling like models in a magazine. But behind each smile, Ego forced for the cameras. Her heart cracked a little more. She watched him closely now. Every smile, every touch, it all felt staged. One afternoon, as Ego was sitting in the living room, one of the housekeepers approached shyly. Madam, Oga said you should prepare that a doctor is coming in the evening for checkup. Just regular tests. He said it's good to monitor your wellness. The woman said, with such casualness, such normalcy that if Ego hadn't been suspicious already, she would have nodded happily. Instead, her throat dried up. Another test? Her mind raced. That night, after Chief had gone to bed, Ego sneaked downstairs to the small study where he kept his files. The room smelled like ladder and dust. The curtains were heavy and thick, muffling the sounds of the night. Hands shaking, she pulled open drawers until she found the folder with her name on it. Medical reports, test results, official-looking documents stamped with hospital seals. Her eyes scanned the papers desperately. Words jumped out at her. Kidney compatibility positive. Donor match. Ego Mbo. Recommended for immediate extraction. Healthy, young female adult. Ego staggered backward. her mouth open in a silent scream. She clutched the folder to her chest and sank into the leather armchair, gasping for breath. It was true. It was all true. The marriage, the gifts, the love bombing. It had never been about her beauty, never about her heart, never even about loneliness. It was about survival. Chief Agua Mama needed her to live longer and she was the sacrifice he had chosen. Tears blurred her vision. She thought of her mother, the woman who had sold her with blessings and wrappers and prayers. She thought of her friends, the ones who had envied her miracle marriage. For a wild moment, Ego thought about running, just leaving the house immediately barefoot if necessary. But where would she go? Chief owned the drivers, owned the gates, owned the police in the area, and her family, they were already bought, paid in full. The next morning, Ego woke up to the sound of suitcases being packed. Chief was smiling at her from the doorway, wearing a crisp white kaftan. My queen, he said warmly, we are traveling to Abuja for a short rest. A change of environment will do us a lot of good. Ego nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. She smiled back, a small, tired smile. Inside her heart, she whispered just one prayer. God, if you can hear me, please save me. The drive to Abuja was smooth, too smooth. The SUV moved like a quiet beast on the expressway. The driver said nothing. Chief sat beside Ego, while Ego sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. Inside her chest, her heart beat painfully against her ribs. But outside, her face remained calm. When they arrived at the hospital, it didn't look like a normal one. No noisy receptionists, no overcrowded waiting rooms, just quiet corridors, white lights, polished tiles, and smiling nurses. 2 bedrooms and 1 sitting room and a small kitchen were kept for them. You rest here for 2 days, my dear, Chief said as he opened a bottle of mineral water and poured her a glass, just to refresh your body, he said casually. Ego looked at him. Why are we in the hospital? But Chief smiled. It's nothing. I came to do my regular checkup. After that, we'll be going back in a few days. But she knew now. She knew. That night, as Chief snored softly from the other room, Ego lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She wondered what she was going to do. She picked out trying to find routes to escape. By morning, 2 doctors arrived. They checked her pulse, checked her eyes, checked her chest with cold stethoscope. You're very healthy, madam, one of them said cheerfully. Perfect for the little procedure we have planned. Ego forced a small smile and nodded. Thank you, doctor. But inside her mind, she screamed. By noon, they handed her a form to sign. Ego stared at it, her hand trembling slightly. At the bottom, the doctor pointed neatly at a line, consent for minor surgery. Just formalities, madam, the nurse said, still smiling. Big people like you, everything must come properly documented. She lifted the pen slowly, her hand hovered over the paper, and in that moment, somewhere between fear and survival, Ego had no choice. It was all true. Chief Agua Mama needed her to live longer, and she was the sacrifice he had chosen. Tears blurred her vision. She thought of her mother, the woman who had sold her with blessings and wrappers and prayers. She thought of her friends, especially the ones who had warned her about her quest for wealth without work. She thought of herself. She had big dreams. Now, she was reduced to just spare parts. She had tried to escape severally since the past few days without success. One night she had packed her clothes and folded some money into her bra. She tiptoed to the door of the hospital suite. Her hands trembled on the handle when she opened it. 2 security men stood by the hallway, stiff, silent, watching her. She closed the door gently, sat on the floor and cried. The next night, she tried again, pretended to be sick, asked to go to the restroom down the corridor. There also, down the corridor, were men in plain clothes following her quietly. She heard one whisper into a walkie-talkie. She didn't bother finishing her acting. She just walked up back to her room, her slippers dragging, her shoulders heavy like soaked clothes. The day before the surgery, Chief walked in with a bouquet of white roses. He placed them beside her like she was a guest at a hotel. Tomorrow, everything changes, he said softly. I'm proud of you, Ego. From the moment I saw your name after that medical outreach, I prayed and hoped you would walk. I can't believe that by tomorrow, everything will be over. He continued smiling. Ego didn't respond. What could she say? Thank you for harvesting me. The morning of the surgery was cold. too cold for a place with sunlight outside. Ego lay on the bed as nurses checked her vitals. One of them smiled kindly. You will sleep soon, madam. When you wake up, everything will be fine. They wheeled her toward the operating room. The light above her blinked slowly. The hall was stretched like a tunnel. As she entered the theatre, her heart began to beat even faster as tears rolled down her face. What if I die? What if this surgery doesn't go well? Doctor, please don't do this. But the doctors pretended not to hear. The mask came down. One of the doctors leaned over. The needle touched her arm, and suddenly the ceiling twisted. The voice echoed, and the world began to melt. Then she heard it. A distant sound, a baby crying, a rooster crowing, and a bucket dropped. Someone called her name. Ego, Ego, come and carry this paper before I change it for you. Then came her mother's voice again, louder this time. Ego, are you still sleeping? Hurry oh! They said one big man is coming from the city for free medical outreach. And he's a very rich man who is coming with plenty doctors and nurses. You better do that thing fast so we'll go early before the line gets long. Her eyes flew open. She was in her room, in Umuokwe, the zinc roof above her head, the scent of palm oil and wood smoke in the air. She sat up quietly, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling like it wanted to escape her body. She touched her side. Everything was smooth, uncut. She was whole. It had been a dream. A loud, long, terrifying dream. She looked around, her mother's voice still shouting from the backyard. Ego burst into tears. Not from sadness, but from relief, from mercy, from being given a second chance. That morning, she didn't oil her skin. She didn't practice her smile in the mirror. She just wore her clothes as she rushed to help her mother with the pepper. Not because she had lost hope, but because she had seen what chasing the wrong dream could cost her. That day, she didn't go for the medical outreach. She sat on her mat, whispering, God, thank you for waking me up from this terrible dream. Because that dream was not just a message, it was a warning. The end. And that is the story of Ego, a girl who thought wealth was the destination but almost lost herself on the way there. This story reminds us that not all that glitters is gold. And sometimes the price of luxury is your peace or your body or soul. So before you chase that fast life, ask yourself, what am I trading in exchange? Because some deals are beautiful on the outside, but deadly on the inside. If this story touched you, please like, share and subscribe to our channel where we bring you real, raw and relatable African stories with powerful life lessons. Your support helps me keep telling these stories, not just for entertainment, but to awaken something deep in all of us. Thank you so much for watching the story. See you in the next one. Bye!